What's up, 12s? This is your boy, Tino coming to you on the Seahawks 360 podcast. Typically, obviously, we're here with Candace Hagens as well. Candace will be back later on this week when we preview the upcoming game against the Minnesota Vikings. This is a reaction pod to the Seahawks game on Sunday night, last night, national television, NBC. Your Seahawks fall to the Green Bay Packers 30-13. Ugly game. Geno Smith injury. Your backup quarterback, Sam Howell, looks like a third string quarterback. Offensive line did not show up. A lot of things to criticize in this game. A very disappointing game as a Seahawks fan. Uh, Even parts of the defense, which we had been praising for the last couple of weeks, did not show up in this game against the Packers. Now, you got to give the Packers their flowers. Jordan Love is a very good quarterback. Jordan Love is a top 10 quarterback, whether you want to admit that or not. Josh Jacobs, tailback signed away from the, I almost said Los Angeles and Oakland Raiders, from the Las Vegas Raiders, third leading rusher in the NFL. Talent at the wide receiver position, although many folks may not know the names: Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed, Dontrevion Wicks, a lot of good players, a lot of talent. Tucker Kraft has been playing well, and the defense is stout. So this is not a team in which the Seahawks should have expected to beat necessarily, but you're at home. It's pretty cold out. You should have a raucous fan base. We'll talk about that in a minute. And honestly, the Seahawks laid an egg. Again, lost 13 or 30-13, went down 14-0 in the first quarter. Just kind of a no-show. And as a Hawks fan, y'all know we don't get that many uh, home games on national television. We don't get that many national television games in the first place. But you're at home Sunday night, first place team. This should have been a blast, right? This should have been a party. This should have been a celebration of Mike McDonald and this newfound stingy defense. And instead, the Packers crashed the party. It was not fun. This was not a fun game to watch as a Seahawks fan. One side note, I said this on BlueSky that you dress in those ugly ass action green uniforms and you should expect an ugly result. They did not dress to impress in this game. It's like going to a party that you're hosting, big time party, all kinds of people, friends coming through, obviously national television for this game, and they're showing up in some jorts and a t-shirt, right? Like that's what this looked like. Um, Anyways, just not an enjoyable game as a fan whatsoever. Uh, Biggest news for me outside of the loss is Geno Smith gets injured, gets hit by Edgerrin Cooper, rookie inside linebacker for the Packers, hurts his knee, out for the rest of the game. Those who've been clamoring for Sam Howell, when the Seahawks acquired him, said, this is an acquisition that I think was smart. I think Sam Howell, at the time, thought Sam Howell has a future as a starting quarterback in the NFL, could potentially be the heir apparent to Geno Smith at some point in time. I take it all back. I was wrong. I get it was a small sample. I get we haven't seen Howell like with live bullets much, but boy, he was terrible. You see what the alternative is to Geno Smith when we saw Sam Howell in this game for a longer stretch. Geno has his warts, right? In work speak, you have your strengths and you have your opportunities. Geno certainly has opportunities. I'm not here to say that he doesn't. But when you see what the alternative is, right, in Sam Howell, talking about a quarterback who started the entire season last year for the Washington Commanders, a quarterback that was sought after by teams like the Rams. He came in, he's so incredibly slow with his progressions. I saw someone on BlueSky say that if his first option isn't open, you're in trouble. Couldn't be more true. He's so slow in his progressions. It's like handing a PlayStation controller to a kid, to a 10-year-old kid who's never played Madden before and expect him to go through his progressions in Madden in a pass play. How just he was so slow with it. 1.7 yards per throw on 14 attempts yesterday. In my opinion, I get we gave up, what was it, a fourth rounder for Howell? No future with this team unless it's as a backup. I do not want to see him starting real games for the Seahawks. I just don't. Seahawks, I think, need to put a larger emphasis on acquiring the quarterback of the future. I think they're going to need to bite the bullet with a high pick in this upcoming draft. If there's a quarterback that they like even more coming out in 26, then maybe you work towards that. I think signing Geno to a team-friendly extension that might be a 1-year contract, could be a 2-year contract, I think is smart if you want to stay in contention. If you're planning on bottoming out, sure, but I don't think that's the plan here. So Sam Howell is not the answer to the quarterback position for the Seattle Seahawks. I saw in 14 attempts, I've seen enough. Now, I know his history at North Carolina. I know his history with the Commanders. I know, the arm talent that a lot of folks have seen, the physical talent a lot of folks have seen. I don't doubt that there's something there. I don't think Sam Howell is leading you to a Super Bowl victory. And if the goal is to win Super Bowls, Sam Howell is not the answer. The only way Sam Howell is even remotely close to the answer is a 2000 Baltimore Ravens level defense where they started Trent Dilfer as their quarterback. That is the only way you're going to see this team win a Super Bowl with a quarterback the caliber of Sam Howell. You're going to have to take some chances. You're going to have to trade some picks likely. You got quarterbacks like Cam Ward coming out. Cam Ward, I think right now would be better than Sam Howell. But I also think this speaks to Geno Smith and his quality. And that I think a lot of folks take Geno Smith for granted, right? There are a lot of people out there who say, Geno's terrible. Geno's throwing interceptions. There are times where he is not good, but there's only a handful of quarterbacks that are really, really good in this league. Geno also makes some miraculous throws, and you don't make those types of throws without taking some chances. We've seen the bad of that this season, probably more so than the good. But I still believe Geno Smith is a talented quarterback, and I certainly think that Geno Smith, he would have to have a tremendous amount of talent around him. The Seahawks don't have that talent yet, but Geno Smith could take a team deep into the playoffs if he was surrounded by better talent, primarily a better offensive line. These tackles, Abe Lucas, I called him Abe Turnstile Lucas on BlueSky. He looks horrible at times. Charles Cross did not look good at times. Oluwatimi gets injured. They bring in Jalen Sundell. He played pretty well. Laumea had some moments, but did not look great in this game. I still think he is potentially a starter at guard in 2025. I almost said tweeted. I skeeted on BlueSky that Zach Charbonnet scores a touchdown with Sundell and Laumea pulling out front, just like John Snyder drew it up in the offseason. Obviously, I was joking, but that was interesting to see. They did look good on that play. I think Sundell may, in fact, be a slightly below average level starter at center. I'd like to see him get more time just to see what we have in the same way they're doing with Laumea. But this offensive line is so bad. And Geno spoke to it the previous week when he said, if we get this level of line play, we can be great. He's right. And I think a lot of the things that are happening to Geno are a product of this line. I will also say, I've seen a lot of blame going towards Ryan Grubb. And while I do think he's having a rough year, how are you supposed to be a good offensive coordinator without an offensive line? You can get creative with some short game stuff. You can get creative with some of your run blocks. But the reality is Coordinators are only as good as their quarterbacks, and coordinators are only as good as their offensive lines. And you have a slightly above average quarterback and probably the worst offensive line in football. It doesn't, that's not setting Ryan Grubb up to succeed. Could he do some things differently? Yes, 100% he could. There were some perimeter runs in the first half that were just not working, and he kept doing them over and over again. I assume he felt like they couldn't run up the middle, and so he wanted to test the outside, or saw something on film in the previous weeks against the Packers defense where they thought they could run outside. Wasn't working and kept doing it. Super frustrating for me. But again, if you are set up at your work, you have a job to do, and you're not given the tools to do it, and then you get in trouble because you're performing poorly, whose fault is that? Is it Ryan Grubb's fault that he's been this bad? Yes, to a certain extent. I would also say, what did you expect hiring an offensive coordinator who was previously an offensive coordinator for a couple of years in the Pac-10, who had no pro football coaching experience, to come in and instantly be a great offensive coordinator? That's, realistically speaking, the Seahawks could not expect that of him. That transition is too much. I think about, obviously college coaches can come in and succeed in the NFL. We see it all the time. But, I think about when Steve Spurrier left Florida, and I think it was from Florida to what was the Redskins, now the Commanders. And it was exciting, and we wanted to see him, succeed. And he didn't. He tried a lot of college concepts, and they didn't necessarily work. And then we saw Jerry Tarkanian move from college basketball to NBA. It's not and he did not succeed either. It's not an easy transition to make, right? Rick Pitino didn't succeed with the Boston Celtics. So I think it's a more difficult transition than people think. And while Ryan Grubb has not done himself any favors with some of the play calling, I do think he's an innovative mind, right? And I think if we see him come back for a second year, it's because John Schneider and Mike McDonald see talent in Ryan Grubb and believe that he has the ability to grow into his role. If you're hired for a job and you've never done that job before, but you're excited to do it, and it's, adjacent or near the job that you did previously, but at a different place, is it fair that people expect you to be great out of the gates? I don't think so. I think you need time to learn. And so I wouldn't call myself a Ryan Grubb apologist, because I think the jury is still out as to whether he's the right fit. But if you're not going to give him time to figure it out, then he better be making absolutely egregious mistakes all the time. Now, that may indeed be what's happening. And if it is, then Coach McDonald and John Schneider will make the right decision with him. But if he's not, and these are simply growing pains, and it has a lot to do with a, Swiss cheese offensive line, then he may be a scapegoat, and maybe the wrong scapegoat. So I think for me personally, I want to see how the year ends. I think it's probably prudent to keep Ryan Grubb around for another year, because I think he's a very smart football man, right? He's got some good ideas, but he needs time. And I say this all the time, you're not winning anything without a good offensive line. You're just not. It's not a coincidence that, the Lions are as good as they are. Their line is amazing. It's not a coincidence that, the Bills, who lose some skill players for many different reasons, still give Josh Allen time, still are a great offense. I think because that offensive line is very, very good. The same thing with the 49ers. Their offensive line gets hurt. Trent Williams goes down. It's a wonder why they can't, move the ball anymore. It's because the offensive line isn't the same as what it was. Offensive lines control a lot of outcomes within a football game. And I think this offensive line is really, really bad. Which leads me to my final thought on this offense. when you look at the Seahawks offense, top to bottom, how many of these players do you think should be on the 2025 Seahawks? What I mean by that is how many of these players are a defining central part of a what you would see as a championship type offense, a team that could win it all. Because ultimately, in my mind, that's the goal. The goal is to win it all. I'm sorry. And for me at least, I don't want to think about anything else. And when I look at this team, if when I look at Geno Smith, I have to ask myself, is this a quarterback who can win a Super Bowl? And I think if I'm being honest, the answer is no. Are Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet a running back tandem that could lead a dominant running game? I think the answer is yes. I don't love the two of them. I think there are more talented running backs out there, but I don't think having the most talented running back means you are a Super Bowl contender. Wide receiver. Who of these guys are you keeping? Who of these guys do you love? And I think it's Metcalf and JSN. But I think the economics of that position matter. How much money do you want to pay DK when his contract is up? Is it worth it to you? I think that there was a pass in last night's game where DK ran a short route and JSN ran a route, behind him essentially. And Metcalf's was a little curl or a little dig type route. And the three defenders in the area that were playing zone all gravitated to Metcalf, which left JSN wide open behind him. And Geno Smith found him. I think those types of passes are because DK attracts so much attention. And so whether DK is putting up the stats that we have become accustomed to or not, he's an incredibly important part of this offense. So my answer to that question is yes, DK and JSN are a part of a Super Bowl winning, Super Bowl competing, competing, or playoff contending 2025 Seattle Seahawks team. Tyler Lockett is not making an impact anymore. And the Jake Bobo, Kobe White, Derek Young type dudes they're fungible. You may be fans of them, but the reality is they're fungible. You can bring in guys just like that. Tight end. I wouldn't say there's any real talent in the tight end room. I keep AJ Barner because he's on a rookie contract and can block. The other two, Fant and Farrell Brown, you can do without. In fact, I would say you're better off having young players in that position with a higher ceiling that you're not paying as much. And then the offensive line. Charles Cross, I think, is too talented to give up on, but when his contract is up and you're ready to extend him, if he's asking for a ton of money and there's other teams that are willing to give it to him, I think you let him walk, unfortunately. I had high hopes for him. I thought he was an all-pro potentially this year. He started on fire and he's been trash ever since. Tomlinson is a no-go. The center position is a dumpster fire. Laumea and Christian Haynes, I think between the two of them, you probably have one starting guard, maybe even in 25. The economics of the salary cap and all those things, I think you need one of them to step up to make this team work. It looks like Laumea right now. Haynes, Jarrell, Sundell, those guys being backups, that's fine with me. Bradford, I don't know. Bradford's going to stick around. Fant, who knows? And Lucas, I think if Lucas can be healthy, he is a good right tackle despite a bad game against the Packers. But I don't think you count on Abe Lucas to be your starting right tackle heading into the 2025 season because of his health history. So out of the offensive players, I've got, I don't know, that I truly believe in, that I really think are assets to this team. I've got Metcalf, JSN, and honestly, that's it. Outside of the guys you're keeping because because of their costs, like a AJ Barner, right? Like a Zach Charbonnet, like a Christian Haynes, like a Jalen Sundell, like most of these other dudes. I'm not saying you're not going to have them in 25. I'm saying these are central pieces to this team. These central pieces on offense to this team are JSN, and DK. And I think the other ones you can find replacements. I hate to say it. And that's an indictment of John Schneider to a certain extent. We will do the same exercise with the defense after I talk about the defense in this last game. Um, Seahawks go down 14-0. The Seahawks ended up with no sacks and one pass defended. I think this is partly the Packers being a very good offense and Jordan Love being a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He is very, very good. 20 of 27, 229, two touchdowns, no interceptions, no mistakes, really. Um, he's better than people think he is. I do wonder if the time that Jordan Love spent on the bench when Aaron Rodgers was there really benefited him, right? This is a pattern or a method that we saw NFL teams take for a long, long time, where you would draft a quarterback, right? Mahomes sat behind, what's his name? Alex Smith, where you were an understudy. You did not take the reins of a team right away. Steve McNair on the Houston Oilers for a long time, or Tennessee Titans, whichever one he was on. I think it was both. I think he was on the bench for a couple of years before he really was a starter. I think sometimes this is the better route to go with a young quarterback, which is why I'm anxious to get that quarterback in. Even if you spend a high pick on a quarterback in the upcoming draft, sign Geno to a 1 or 2 year contract and let Geno play and let this quarterback sit on the bench and watch and learn and sit in meetings and learn what it's like to be a professional. Learn what it's like to read NFL defenses. Learn what it's like on a day-to-day basis, how to study. Teach them, right? I think there's something to be said for that. And Jordan Love, to me, is a product of it. Jordan Love was a low first-round pick. First-round pick, nevertheless, but a low one. And he's become a top 10 quarterback. Not saying that is the formula or that's the end all, but I do, I think it's a case-by-case basis, but I do think it can be a very effective tactic. And it would fit with where we are with the Geno Smith timeline. I got to talk about Reek Woolen because these past couple of games, Reek has lacked an incredible amount of mental focus, mental toughness. There was a pass where I think it was most indicative. Christian Watson, who is also a big physical wide receiver, was on the sideline and Love threw the ball over Reek's head and Watson caught it, acrobatic catch for a first down. And what this says to me is Reek Woolen should never have passes go over his head. This is a 6'4" cornerback who runs a sub-4 340. So physical. And, the physical talent is off the charts. This is in baseball, this is 80 grade athleticism, 80 grade speed, right? 80 grade size. And you should never be backpedaling and jump and not get to a ball and have the receiver you were covering catch it when you are that big. There was a touchdown that he gave up. I don't know if it was last week or the week before where he's trailing in the end zone. Bad technique, right? Like, I just think Reek is lacking focus and he makes some big plays and he is talented, but the Reek Woolen we saw in year 1 is not the Reek Woolen we're seeing in year 3. I think the talent remains, but the focus is not there. It simply is not there. Do I like him as my starting corner? Sure, I do. But he's got to focus. He's got to lock down. And it's really evident to me that he is not thinking and he's getting beat. No sacks isn't good either, right? That's just part of that is Jordan Love. Part of that is a good Packers offensive line. But you're at home. It should be really loud. You should be amped up for a Sunday night game. And no sacks sucks, right? We all know sacks are probably the one thing that get the fans into the game the most. And they weren't there. On a positive note, the Seahawks held Josh Jacobs, who's the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL, to 94 yards on 26 carries. That is a 3.6 yard average, is very, very good. A long of 19 yards. I like that, right? You held an explosive running back to 3.6 yards a carry. Green Bay ran the ball 34 times for 140 yards. But all in all, the run defense was there, right? Jordan Love, 229 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. You know, the pass defense was not good. There were some very open Green Bay players. Um, I think LaFleur is a very underrated quarterback. People like to talk about Shanahan. People were like talking about Mike McDonald. In his first year, Sean McVay, all the Wonder Kids. But the reality is LaFleur has been doing it for a while and is an incredible coach, incredible offensive coach specifically. And we saw that in this game. So Seahawks defense, I'm still a believer. I'm still excited about this Seahawks defense, but they did not look great in the first half in this game. They held the Packers to 10 points in the second half and looked much, much better and kept the Seahawks in the game and relatively close. So defense was okay, could be better. Not a championship defense, yes, or yet. But the building blocks are there. Final note, before I talk about who I think our keepers on this offense or on this defense. Kick returner AJ Darden looks like a keeper, if you ask me. He looked, or excuse me, Jalen Darden. I said AJ Darden. I'm thinking baseball. Jalen Darden is a keeper. He has wiggle. He's sudden. I've really enjoyed watching him return kicks. You watch him, and you're not worried about him making mistakes the way we were with D. Williams. He also looks like he's a threat to break one, right? To me, you keep him. To me, he is a player I want to see have the kick and punt return position for a number of years. As long as he can hold on to the ball and he can be consistent, I really like him there a lot. I think he's a keeper. Now let me get to this defense right quick. I think I pull up this depth chart. There are a lot more building blocks on the defensive side of the ball. A lot more. It's obviously you've got, guys like Leonard Williams, guys like Byron Murphy II, Derek Hall, Tyrese Knight, Ernest Jones, Boye Mafe, Reek Woolen, Devon Witherspoon, Julian Love. Like that's basically your whole defense. And all those guys are very central parts of the future of the Seattle Seahawks defense. So that's Murphy 1, Williams 2, Hall 3, Knight 4, Jones 5, Mafe 6, Woolen 7, Love 8, Witherspoon 9. So 9 of your 11 players on defense. Obviously, you rotate some, but 9 of your 11, I think, are there. This defense is much further along as far as having a future and a base than the offense is. I want to see the Seahawks invest tremendously in the offensive line, right? I didn't name K9 or Charbonnet or even Geno Smith as building blocks for the future because I think they're fungible. Not Geno, but K9 and Charbonnet. Geno, I just think you need to upgrade. But I think the running back position for the Seahawks could be replaced if they had to. Offensive line needs help. So, in short, this team is built on the defensive side. I love the defensive side. They didn't play very well in this game. They didn't make very many big plays in this game. But you have the makings of a very good defense. The offense needs a tremendous amount of help. I like Geno Smith. I don't think he's a starting quarterback for a Super Bowl winning team. And ultimately, that's all that matters to me. Thanks, guys, for listening. Candace and I will likely be back later on this week to preview the Minnesota Vikings game. I hope you enjoyed my first solo venture with the Seahawks 360 podcast. You can find me on BlueSky at Tino Jr. 20. That is TINOJR20. I appreciate the listen. Take care, y'all. Go Hawks.